Governor DeLille and Secretary McGrain here, and I believe Attorney General Labrador is absent today and will not be in. On our consent agenda for the Board of Examiners for today, we have 5 items. We have the minutes from last month. Item number 2 is from the State Treasurer's Office. This is a request pursuant to Idaho Code 671210 for approval of the State Treasurer's annual investment administration fee to be charged to state agencies for fiscal year 2027. And Chief of Staff Laura Steffler is here if you have any questions. The Department of Administration, Division of Public Works, has a request for a recognition of assignment from DNKK LLC to H.E. Jerome LLC, and this is for the State Liquor Division in Jerome. Item number 4 is from the Idaho State Department of Agriculture. This is a request for deficiency warrant spending approval as authorized under Idaho Invasive Species Act 2008, Section 22, 1912 Idaho Code for the treatment of quagga mussels in the Snake River near Twin Falls. And Director T. Walt is here if you have any questions on that item. And item number 5 is from the State Controller's Office. This is a notification that the federal mileage rate has increased 3.5 cents. The federal rate for business was 72.5 cents since January 1st, 2026 is now 76, effective July 1, 2026. The current state of Idaho mileage rate is at 70 cents. So with that, Governor and Secretary, that's our consent agenda items.
Well, on the first one, on the state treasurers, if you do the math, that's that's almost a doubling in 5 years of the fee for fixed income. What do we know at what time, or maybe Laura knows at what time we have to act on this?
Have Laura come up. Yes,
Yeah, please.
Thanks, Laura.
Come up and introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, members, and my name is Laura Steffler. I'm the Chief Deputy with the State Treasurer's Office. And Governor, to that point, I included the history of the fees charged to the pool, and you'll see that it's ranged really from the midpoint, so it's 3 basis points, just to give that some context, from like 3.5 basis points down to 1 basis point. And so we're really still very much in the center of what the typical administrative fee is for the pool. And so there's things that factor into that, such as, because we're charging that on the average daily balance of the portfolio. And so when we received like the incentive money during COVID, the stimulus money, the balance of the pool went way up, so our fee could come down. And then as that money has been spent and the balance of the portfolio comes down, we up the fee some to still collect enough to cover the actual expenses. And then also in the documentation, you know, I have put what the appropriation is for the actual expenses to run that pool. So you can see that it hasn't really jumped. It jumped a little bit from 25 to 26 because we asked for an additional position to manage the portfolios. And that was probably one of the only jumps that we've had in that appropriation over the years. So that just kind of gives you the context of how that percentage rate moves around a little bit and what it's based on.
But my question is, when do we have to act? When does the land board or the Board of Examiners have to act on this request?
So typically we change the fee in August for the August distribution for the July interest. And so we haven't prorated interest yet this month, so we are hoping to have it approved today so that we can change the fee for this month's interest proration.
But the history that was in the Board of Examiners book says in 2 or 3 instances we've had a holiday. We haven't charged anything.
That is true.
We ate the administrative costs, and of course with technology today, managing fixed income is much simpler than when you had a visor and a general ledger and you had to do it. And the question is, the fee will almost double over 5 years. And the document that is on our desk today shows that the average, the daily average balance is, in 23, it was 6.5 billion, then 7.9, then 8.1, and now 7.9. And it's kind of perfunctory if you're calling up and saying, give me a return on, 50 million versus 55 million. So the question is the variation, and I think the documentation said, we just add up all our costs, divided by the average daily balance, and was that correct?
That is correct. And to give you a certain comfort level, when we had those fee holidays, we had actually collected too much cash. There are federal regulations over how much a internal service agency can charge for their fees. And so we do comply with that, which is that we monitor the cash balance for where these appropriations are made and make sure that we're not holding more than 2 months of operating costs at any given time. And so you'll also see in the calculation where we show what the cash balance is in the fund and how much, if it is over 2 months of operating, then we reduce how much we want to collect by that. So we are complying with a regulation that make sure that we aren't collecting too much cash, like overcharging, and then, but allowing us for that 2-month cushion, because you don't want to run out of cash in that fund and not be able to pay the expenses. And then to your point of, cost reduction, I will say that we run an in-house system that we built. We have IT people that built, and so like the largest costs for running our investment pools is so we have to get pricing on securities daily. We have to pay for external managers to oversee what we're doing. So that's where the costs come from managing. And then of course we have our staff, which are very in tune with the state's cash flows. So that's what they do, is make sure that, on the day-to-day basis, all the expenditures of the state, that we have enough cash to pay for those on a daily basis.
Governor, follow-up question.
Go ahead.
And this is not my area. The governor has much better understanding than I do. But I guess one of the questions, looking at the history and going along with the governor's question, it sounds like from the math you guys were doing that the rate isn't actually how we determine the administrative fee. Like because the rates fluctuate so significantly over time. So I guess the question for me is, why is it presented to us as a rate if this isn't actually how we determine the administrative fee? Because the fee has increased over time. Right, which I think is part of the governor's point. The work balance.
Right, it's gone from
necessarily-
0.13 to 0.24 over the past 5
Well,
years.
it goes everything from 0.013 to 0.057 at one point in time. I mean, that's a pretty wide spread, and that's because it adjusts according to
Right.
what the amount is. I do get how this works, but I guess it's odd that it's presented to us as we're using that number to determine rather than just what is the administrative cost.
For the state's investment pools, we actually do set the rate, and we charge that rate all year long. So what we set today is the percentage we're going to collect every month. So we don't adjust that from month to month.
The rate that we're agreeing to today is what you're saying. I mean, the
Yes.
interest rate is a market interest rate. If you can figure out a way to make bankers pay you more,
Right.
to send Chris Anton a note.
So there was a point in time, and that's on that history of fees prior to 1994. The rate was set in code, and we didn't change it from year to year, and it was at 0.25, which was 10 times more than what it is now. But what ended up is that the funds that collected those fees were just collecting cash, and the balances got very large. And so that's when the code changed to have the Board of Examiners approve the fee from year to year, so we could set the fee in a manner that didn't cause a cash balance to accumulate in the fund. And So, like I said, it's just largely based on the average daily balance in the portfolios that we manage. Dictates how much cash we collect based on that percentage rate. And we just adjust it up and down every year to make sure that that cash doesn't grow.
But I think to the secretary's point, all you do is, here's your cost,
Yes,
average daily balance divided by your cost, that's the rate, period.
yes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm
We
good.
just do it on an annualized basis rather than a monthly. We have a different pool, the local government investment pool, that in Idaho code doesn't require approval, and we actually just take the appropriation divided by 12, and we collect the fee, so the percentage changes every month. But we collect the appropriation divided by 12 every month. So if it was, the desire of the legislature at some point, they could do something similar so that we just collect exactly what we're appropriated, no more, no less, and the percentage rate changes of what the administrative fee is. But this is how this one is asked to be done currently, so this is what we do.
Does the code that gives the authority to the Board of Examiners, does it stipulate that this is perfunctory, that we just do it based on your expenses, or does it say we're supposed to use our good judgment?
The code actually doesn't say, so what we're doing is abiding by the federal First Service Agency fees, so that's what we use to guide us in how to do this. But the code just simply says that the Board of Examiners will approve it annually.
Well, I'm going to vote for it, but next year, let's see it earlier, so we don't have a gun to our head.
Absolutely.
And have a conversation about it earlier, so. Anything else?
I think you had
You
a
wanna
comment
make a
about,
motion? I think you have thoughts on other things.
on the one other thing you had.
And the other issue,
Happy to if you
the other issue is the mileage. The general, we often adopt the federal mileage. I think driving a car is cheaper in Idaho than it is elsewhere. So I'm saying we set the mileage rate at 75 cents instead of 76 cents. So with that, Mr. Secretary, I move we amend that recommendation down to 75 and adopt the other parts of the, and I did have one other question for your office. Aren't we going to start charging, or are we going to explore charging the fee on a transfer? That if we have to go through the paperwork, you have to go through the paperwork of doing a transfer, that maybe the Board of Examiners, when we have to do that, we put on some kind of a transfer fee just to cover our administrative costs.
Governor, yes, that's one that I know Justin Collins and Brian Benjamin from my office and Steve Bailey from the Department of Administration are working with
All right.
theirs to include those in the contracts going forward and make that happen.
Okay.
So that's what we're working towards.
All right, that's my motion.
I will second the motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendment to set the mileage rate at 75 cents. And I guess just a comment, Governor, before we vote. I appreciate that Controller, that we're making the increases to the mileage rate, because I know for employees, obviously gas prices have been high for quite some time. So I understand why the feds have done it, and I appreciate the arguments the governor's made. But it is a boost compared to where we are, and an improvement. So I appreciate that.
And I know I'm not voting one, but just one more background for you is when the Fed rate does go down, our policy as a Board of Examiners is to automatically drop that. But when we go up, we bring that before you to review.
That's a great policy.
Sounds like the Idaho way.
I guess if you want to vote on that.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
All right, Governor and Mr. Secretary, we have 4 items on the informational agenda. We have the Idaho Office of Emergency Management. This is where we've requested them to provide an annual update on the deficiency warrants issued for FY26. Item number 7 is from the Attorney General's Office. This is a report of special deputy appointments for the 4th quarter of FY26. Item number 8 is from the Department of Education. This is a notification of employee for accepting additional outside employment. And item number 9 is from the State Insurance Fund. With that, Governor and Secretary, that includes our agenda for today.
We adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Boy, that's a record-long Board of Examiners meeting.
Board of Examiners.
There's Mike.
I don't know if my assistant can type up all those minutes.
Yeah,
They don't know what to do.
just
She's not
winging.
They ran out of ink.
Just winging. Ready? No, still no Attorney General? All right. Board of Land Commissioners, come to order. Director,
All right, Governor, Land Board members, good morning. This is a regular meeting of the State Board of Land Commissioners for Tuesday, August 18th, 2026. And I will say this because I'm sure she watches. It's my mom's birthday. So I wanted to wish my mom a happy birthday.
your mother needs a better life.
So we'll jump into the timber sales update, and I'll move quickly through this. I know we have a pretty robust agenda. So in July, the department sold 14 endowment timber sales at auction, 5 of which saw competitive bidding, representing a 54% upbid over the combined appraised values. 7 endowment sales did not sell at auction and will be reevaluated and offered for sale at a later date. 9 of the 14 sales were salvage sales following the wind throw event from last December. The Good Neighbor Authority program also sold a sale for the U.S. Forest Service that saw a 45% increase over the appraised value. On the endowment side, about 46 million board feet of volume was sold in July for more than $11 million. On the next table on page 2, the department is offering 11 sales and about 31 million board feet of volume for auction this month. 8 of the 11 are salvage sales. Total advertised value of these sales is $4.4 million. On the next table, current volume under contracts is just over 482 million board feet in 163 active contracts valued at $157.5 million. On the next table, you can see we're out of the gates this fiscal year with nearly $11 million in timber revenue and nearly $9.5 million expected this month. Looking at the next table on page 3, about 42 million board feet of volume remains in process for FY26, and we will continue to provide updates to the board as the volume in process works through the system. And so far in FY27 timber sale volume, we have 73.5 million board feet of volume either sold or in process. The graphs on page 3, there's not much to report here as we're only a month in. You can see cumulative harvest volume is down. This is largely somewhat of a hangover effect from the early breakup, plus shifting the focus to take care of the salvage sales, which are typically lower volume, but plenty of time to catch up. On the graph on page 4, this tracks our monthly stumpage price and 6-month average price. The inland Northwest lumber market is relatively strong, with higher lumber prices driven largely by constrained supply and reduced Canadian imports. However, housing demand remains soft, so the outlook is constructive but cautious, with Idaho timber likely continuing to attract solid mill demand. So, Governor, Land Board members, I will stop there to see if there are any questions.
Questions?
Governor?
Controller?
Thank you, Governor and Director. I guess one big thing is with our current administration and what's taking place with Canada and the tariffs and basically the excess capacity that Canada has, and they're dumping a lot of that here in our market, and the impact it's causing our market here and for our mills and our forest industry. I don't know if you or some of your team members could speak to that and the impact, or if there's something we could do on our side, maybe if it's some other part, but I think it could have a huge impact on our Idaho forest products and our industry here.
I could work my way, Governor and Mr. Controller, I could work my way through that, but I might turn to Bill or Jim if they've got some quick remarks on that topic. Here comes Bill.
Welcome.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. Bill Hoganson, Deputy Director, for the record. Mr. Controller, I think as we look at things, there's a lot of factors that we don't control, right? And so for us, I think as managers of endowment land, continuing to focus on what we do control, being consistent with the supply that we deliver for the industry so we can maintain that infrastructure in the state through these times of difficult markets. And that's something we've done in the past when we've seen prices drop for various reasons. We've been consistent with our program, consistent in supplying the mills, thinking long-term and big picture on what's good for the endowment lands and what's good for the forest products industry infrastructure. So I think keeping that long-term perspective on our management is going to be important.
Bill, while you're up there, we had a lot of salvage sales. Salvage sales generally aren't scheduled sales. As we go through the salvage sales, what's the backlog of our regular cadence of sales that sits out there? Are we getting a buildup because we've got a lot of salvage sales?
Governor and land board members, no significant buildup in volume. Our regular green sale program will continue to move. Yes.
Thank you.
Maybe just one more
Go ahead.
for Director and Bill. It would be helpful, I think, to include maybe those cells that did not sell on our report as well, maybe just list them out, because trying to tie back from last month, this month, and what's on that map, I was trying to reconcile that and trying to make that happen, so maybe that would be helpful for us as well.
Thank you. We'll try to do that, Mr. Controller. Yeah.
Yeah, and Governor, Mr. Controller, we do have I have my little cheat sheet here that I can send out to the board regarding the sales that did not sell. A lot of market factors at play here, given the cost to go after lower quality and lower volume sales is a big factor here. So, and to your point, Governor, your question on the backlog, we still maintain roughly about 500 million board feet of volume that's under contract. So we're not seeing that change a whole lot right now, but we'll be watching that and hoping to move quickly through these salvage sales to refocus more efforts on the green sales.
Continue.
Okay, Governor, land board members, let's move on to the endowment transactions, including leases, permits, and real estate transactions. The department issued a total of 7 instruments in a mix of leases, lease assignments, and land use permits in July, and completed a handful of real estate transactions, including a deed granted and a deed acquired and subsequently granted related to the Emmett Airport Pond surplus property, which was formerly owned by the Department of Fish and Game. On page 2, in leasing revenue, this is just reporting for the first month of the fiscal year, but as you can see, we're out of the gates exceeding revenue projections by a little bit, and ahead of the 3-year average for leasing revenue at this time. And on page 4, just a small amount of funding has been deposited into the permanent fund for mineral royalties at the beginning of the fiscal year. And as you could see, remember last fiscal year, we hit a record there. So we're hoping to exceed that line by the end of the fiscal year. Governor, land board members, I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
Questions? Continue.
Okay, let's move on to the fire season update. As of August 17th, and this is information, members of the board, that you should have, as of yesterday, sent you the latest information that we have. So as of yesterday, the emergency fire suppression expenditures are estimated to be at just over $31 million. After recovering approximately $10.9 million in reimbursable costs, the net obligation to the suppression account is about $20.3 million. On table 1, you can see that we've had over 177 ignitions for about 10,000 acres burned. This is just in IDL protection. 80% or 143 of these fires are human caused, so significant impact there on the human ignition side. We're entering a more challenging period of the 2026 fire season as conditions continue to dry across the state. The significant wildland fire potential outlook indicates above average fire potential statewide through August and September. The outlook also calls for above average temperatures in August, with northern Idaho having equal chances of precip and southern Idaho having the potential for increased moisture. While additional rainfall would provide immediate benefits to ongoing fires and suppression operations, its longer-term impact will be limited as fine fuels continue to cure. Increased moisture can also produce thunderstorms and elevate the risk of new lightning-caused fires. Drought conditions remain across much of Idaho. Although July rainfall has resulted in some improvement in north central Idaho, overall fuels remain dry and receptive to ignition, and the combination of hot temperatures, dry fuels, and continued drought means new fires can spread rapidly and become more difficult to manage. Fire restrictions are currently in place across most of Idaho. The attached map provides the current location and level of restrictions across the state. In response to continued fire activity and the need for additional resources, the Idaho National Guard was activated to support wildfire operations last month. The state had 2 Type 1 National Guard water-dropping helicopters and 1 Type 1 medevac helicopter supporting fire suppression efforts and firefighter safety in southern Idaho. Recently, the 2 bucket ships were demobbed from the Big Grass Fire since suppression efforts are winding down there, moving more into mop-up and rehab and repair efforts. We greatly appreciate the help of General Donnellan and the Idaho National Guard, and we look forward to this continued partnership. You can see on the next page, there are significant fires outside of ideal protection. I don't need to go through all of these, but you can see the most significant acreage burned in one particular fire is the Big Grass Fire, which is 82% contained. And you can go down the list with Big Rock, Tartar Fire, and the Upper Smith Fire. These are all outside of ideal protection, but we did provide support to all of these fires. You can see on the table on page 2 that total acres burned so far this year across Idaho is at nearly 700,000 acres. This is a significant increase since last month's reporting. And the table on page 3 gives you a current breakdown of the costs associated with the $31 million in fire expenditures thus far this fire season. Just briefly across the West, we're now in the heart of a fire season in the West, and fire activity remains very high across the West and the Pacific Northwest, and the Pacific Northwest continues to see large, significant fire activity. Nationally, we're at preparedness level 5, reflecting very high fire activity and significant demand for firefighting resources. There are currently dozens of large fires burning across the country with tens of thousands of firefighters and support personnel committed to these incidents. Nationally, we have already exceeded 7.2 million acres burned this year, roughly 70% above the 10-year average for this point in the season. The national fire picture remains very active, with the Northwest currently being one of the primary hotspots. So really the bottom line is that we are in the most demanding part of fire season in the West. Idaho remains an area of concern, but we continue to maintain a high level of preparedness with an emphasis on aggressive initial attack, safety, while conditions remain favorable for new ignitions and rapid fire growth. So, Governor, Land Board members, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Director, have you got an estimated guess of, you've got total estimate of 25 million. Is that within the margin of error what it's going to be, or you've got a lot of fires? There's one that you and I have talked about a lot that we haven't got the bill for yet. So as we start thinking about our recommendation to the legislature for fire suppression, can you give us a guesstimate of what we've spent so far, and what are we probably halfway through the critical fire season right now?
Yeah, Governor, Land Board members, appreciate the question. I could say we probably have at least another 5 weeks before we see some change out there. I hope I'm wrong. I hope conditions improve sooner. But we'll be into this through the month of September. Our suppression account balance right now, I think you're referring to that, is about 25 million. We did receive a little more than 30 million as of July 1st. But there's been a lot of reconciliation back and forth between what we owe our federal partners and what they owe us. And so that's kind of a moving number there in the suppression account. We have started paying some bills out of that, this current fire season, out of that suppression account. But with the fires that are not ours, like on page 2, several of those fires, all of those fires are not ours. But I think they all have a cost share component. those costs have yet to be reconciled and provided to us. We do have some estimates of one or two of those fires, but because they are cost share fires, they are not our own. It'll take a little bit of time to understand and realize what our costs are. But our fire business folks continue to pay attention to that, and we'll continue to track that closely.
The fire right up here that you can walk to from here, we got a $5 or $6 million liability that's not reflected on this. Is that correct?
Governor, that is correct because that one is a cost share fire. It's not our own, so that didn't, those funds did not come directly out of the suppression account yet, but we will, whatever is owed on that fire, we will ultimately be paying out of the suppression account. We just don't have that full picture just yet.
All right. Superintendent.
Thank you. Director Miller, you may have answered part of this question in your answer back to the governor. When you talked about the $10 million of reimbursement coming into the state, is that federal only? Is it other states? Is it other agencies? Where does that money come from?
Governor and Madam Superintendent, I think the majority of that is reimbursed to us from our federal partners, but other states do also pay us for when we show up. Say, for example, we send resources to a fire that's under the management of the state of Oregon Department of Forestry. They would then cover our costs and reimburse us for our time as well as the time on the equipment. So predominantly, most of those costs, I'm looking at Julia, most of those costs that are owed to us are because of sending resources to federal fires. But again, with our Northwest Compact and other agreements with other states, we do seek reimbursement from other states.
Governor, one
Go ahead.
more question. Thank you. Clearly, we want 100% containment on fires. Looking through the material and seeing where different fires are, it raised a question in my mind. Is there a percent of containment at the point that you say, once we get it to this level, it more rapidly gets to 100% containment? Is there like a benchmark or this sort of like sweet spot of where you want to get to for containment?
Governor and Madam Superintendent, yeah, we want to see, these are, again, these are not fires being managed by Department of Lands, so these are outside of our district. We'd love to see 100% containment on all of our fires. We are required, as long as we can do it and it's safe, we are required to fully contain our fires and our protection. Sometimes it gets a little challenging, and then you certainly have to rely on geographical features to help with that percent containment. But our goal is 100% containment on all of our fires. And with these off-district, some of these are very difficult given the size and the magnitude, the geographical features, the terrain. Some of these are very difficult to fully contain. But I know the federal government is employing a full suppression strategy, and I know they're aiming towards full containment on all of these fires.
Go ahead.
Sorry, a follow-up on that, and maybe I didn't ask my question well, and that's very likely. Obviously, the 100% is the goal, and I get that. But is there a place where once you get to 40%, I'm of course making that up, then you're more easily able, anyone is more easily able to get to 100. So like the initial suppression and the initial efforts are gauged at putting it out. But is there just a line where you say, we're really working hard to get it to 50% because we know once we have half of it, we get to the other half more quickly?
It's highly variable. I'm going to kick that question to Julia.
Well, I will tell you, it's voodoo.
Okay.
So,
Come
And
respond to my statement.
And I'm good with the voodoo as being the answer. That's,
again, it's highly variable based on conditions, based
Okay,
on factors
fair
on the
enough.
ground. I don't know if Julia has anything else to add. Okay.
They all agree it's voodoo.
Okay, I'm good.
Go ahead.
Governor, I have another question, but pick up on it. There is a point, though, at which, and I think if we could reach out to NIFC to see, when resources start getting pulled from a fire.
Right.
Because resources get pulled well before 100%. They get pulled somewhere around 60. So just what that threshold typically, I get that it will vary fire to fire.
Well,
but there is a point clearly that resources start getting reallocated to more active fires.
At
than
the
current.
federal level, it's my understanding, I'll look at Julia, sometimes if you have total containment, you've got a hard number of days to submit your rehab. The last time this burned up here in 91, they said it was 98% contained because they were frantically trying to figure out how much money they needed, and they could have gone out and contained it. Well, you know, when you looked at, it was said it was 80, it was only 80% contained and there was no smoke. But there's a variety of reasons that the federal government moves the containment number. There was a fire just recently that was 100% contained one day, and the next day it was only 10% contained because, and I used to get high blood pressure about containment. I just don't pay any attention to it anymore.
And I guess I mean, just from the training I did, I know when it shifts to mop up, you still won't necessarily be fully contained because there's the risk of it flaring up. But if at that point, it's low-level resources on the fire,
Right.
despite not being fully
And
contained.
Governor-
I guess I know there's some
Yeah.
threshold that
Yeah,
happens.
Governor and Mr. Secretary, you're right. I mean, as conditions warrant, I mean, you need to free up those resources for IA on other fires. As things start to wind down, containment increases, there's not a whole lot of fire activity or changes to the perimeter of the fire, then resources will be demobbed. If they've been out there for a full 14 days, they'll go into R&R for a couple of days and be ready to go for the next IA, while you still keep resources out there to continue to mop up, and then you've got to bring in another group of folks to focus in on the rehab and the repair, the emergency stabilization. So it is an ongoing effort for quite some time after the flames have died down. But at that threshold, I mean, I don't know, Julie, if you have anything to add on that, but the exact tipping point that when that decision is made, it's highly variable.
Welcome.
Good morning, Governor, members of the board. For the record, my name is Julia Lauk. I'm the state forester with the Department of Lands. I tried to sit still as long as I could for this discussion. There is no exact breakpoint that you can identify. The number for percentage of containment is based on the fire perimeter and the percentage that is secured. So that's going to vary widely between a small fire and a large fire. Where that breaking point is, that the incident management organization is confident that the fire is going to stay within that perimeter to be able to release resources and begin mop up. On a very large fire, you could be mopping up on one edge while you're still fighting a flaming front on the other.
Further questions? Go ahead.
Governor. Dustin, it may be helpful for us in the past, but there's two tables on here on the fire report. On page one, there's the fire season comparison, and it has the 23, 24, 25, 26. In 26, it has 9,972 acres, the report from yesterday that we were given.
Okay.
But if you look on page two, the table has total acres burned by ownership, and state endowment land has 42,000. And I'm sure that's the difference of what's blue endowment land versus protective, IDL protective land that we're responsible for. I just want to help
Yeah.
clarify that, which one's which, and clarify that.
Yeah, Governor and Mr. Controller, appreciate you pointing that out. So on table one, the fire season comparison to date, that's just acres in our protection. So some of that is endowment, some of that's non-endowment state lands, some of that's federal, some of that's private industrial timber. So that roughly 10,000 acres, is a combination of ownerships. That's within our protection districts. And then you're right, it breaks down further on the other table on page two, where we're at, again, almost at 700,000 acres. Breaks down, you can see state endowment is 43,000 acres. But many of those acres are range acres. Many of those are outside of our protection districts, and those are, we rely on the BLM and other entities to take care of those fires for us. If that if I'm making sense there. So again, table 1, just acres within our protection.
Director, if you can give us a map of the state of Idaho of all the acres we're fully responsible for. We got 3.5 million acres, but or 2.5 million acres, but the acres that we're responsible for, and that changes on a 10-year basis. 10 years we renegotiate
Governor, every 5 years we negotiate that master fire.
and that's coming up right away.
Soon, very soon,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we can do that, Governor.
Okay.
Governor. Dustin, you mentioned in your report, so nationally, we're up 70% above average in terms of acres burned. And just watching the news, I know resources are strained. Are we seeing an impact in terms of resource allocation for Idaho Fire, not just IDL fire responsibility, but even federal, in terms of us being able to get enough crews to any of the fires here in Idaho? I know Washington's been ablaze. You mentioned the Northwest generally, but my sense is, especially with the Spokane fire, it was pulling resources from other locations.
Yeah, Governor, Mr. Secretary, just a couple of weeks ago when we were, things were lighting off in southern Idaho, it was very difficult for the Wildland Fire Service, for example. They managed and handled a lot of those fires because they're now the new Wildland Fire Suppression Agency for the Department of Interior. They had a difficult time getting resources to many of those range fires because a lot of the resources, and again at preparedness level 5 and preparedness level 5 for the Pacific Northwest, a lot of those resources, you're absolutely correct, we're going to Spokane and other places where communities were at risk of burning over. On the grass fire, a CAMT did come in from California. That helped. They helped take care of the resource ordering to get more resources to that particular fire, articulating the values at risk. I mean, you got grazing land and ranches, right? But they were able to articulate that, and then those resources were just challenging to obtain. A lot of resource orders were unable to fill. That's when working with the governor on the emergency declaration, that allowed us to start working through the process to have the governor activate the Guard, and the Guard helped a lot out on the big grass fire in particular by allocating their helicopters and their crews. And so, because we were in such a dire situation, resource orders were unable to fill. Having those additional support from the Guard made a big difference, I think, out in Owyhee County. So we have downgraded now. We're still nationally PL5, but Great Basin has been downgraded to PL3, and Northern Rockies has been downgraded to PL4. Just on our briefing yesterday with the Bureau staff, we did hear that there are more resources now available in the system. Doesn't mean there's a lot, but there are more than there were a couple of weeks ago. So conditions are improving slightly. There's more CAMTs available now too. So we're keeping our fingers crossed for the next several weeks that things don't change too dramatically in the negative direction.
California's just starting.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know if this is a practice that's already taking place, but I think it would be good to track those fires in which we have resource shortages, even when the National Guard in particular is pulled in, because obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but there's at least the potential for those fires to be much bigger than they would otherwise have been. And I think in terms of decision making for us, whether it's, hiring staff, other things, it's good for us to know what risk profile we're taking on by not having the resources when we need them because we're competing with other fires. So just more for the future planning, but I think it would be good to track those fires because plenty of them, we have the resources, we do the initial attack, but there are some that, as you mentioned, like a rangeland fire, all of a sudden can cost 3-4 times as much simply because we couldn't get firefighters on it.
Absolutely. No, thank you.
I am looking at Julia as I say all this because...
No, thank you, Governor, Mr. Secretary. And, one of the big things for us right now is relying on our non-fire staff that have fire quals and our militia. As we've got college students, a lot of those firefighters that are in college, they're going back to school like right now. And so we rely so heavily on our non-fire staff to jump in, to staff the engines, to lead the crews, to participate at the IA level. Yeah.
I'll jump in there just because, I definitely appreciate it, and appreciate all those who go through the training and do it. But it also then puts in the tension what the governor was asking about earlier, which is making sure that we're doing our timber sales and
Right.
we're now pulling resources between competing interests. The beneficiaries are now taking the hit to fight the fires, and that's also something that we just need to always be mindful of.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Secretary, our staff are mindful of that. If they want to participate in fire, we make it very clear that we need to be caught up on your work before we can turn you loose. But oftentimes, desperate times call for desperate measures, and we need people. So.
Right. Thank you.
Further questions? Continue.
Okay, Governor, let's move quickly on to item D. This is our land revenue forecast, and we got Jim Elvin to present this one.
Welcome.
Good morning, Governor, members of the board. For the record, my name is Jim Elbin, Trust Land Division Administrator for the department. The department annually prepares an earnings reserve revenue forecast for the land board, projecting a range of revenue by endowment for the next 4 fiscal years. This forecast is grounded in expected operational levels, timber sales under contract, lease revenues, and agency expenditures. The 4-year net income forecast table, gross revenue graph, and net income graph provide a detailed view of both historical performance and future expectations, which are represented in your attachments 1 through 3. The Land Board has adopted commercial and energy leasing policies to diversify income streams beyond traditional timber sales and agricultural leasing. Several leases in the commercial energy sector are in early exploration and construction phases, and multiple commercial leases are in negotiations for future land board approval. These leasing programs are expected to be the primary source of revenue growth as they offer the greatest potential for increased department income under current guidance. Timber sales remain the primary revenue source. The program has operated at full FAMP implementation, approximately 330 million board feet annually for several years. The higher costs are due to increased silvicultural investments and industry-wide cost pressures from fluctuating fuel prices, inconsistent lumber markets, and high inflation from the last few years. From an operating budget sense, there is flexibility within our current budget allocation to deal with these increased expenditures, which we planned for back in fiscal year 24 when the department with land board support asked for an additional $2.5 million in operating expense money from the earnings reserve in anticipation of FAMP implementation, delivered product sale expansion, and potential expansion of our leasing programs. In fiscal year 26, timber receipts were actually down $3.64 million, attributed to our warm, wet winter, which limited operational season. Harvest levels reached 88% of the 3-year average, with 282 million board feet hauled compared to 315 million board feet in fiscal year 2025. Overall trends, our gross land management revenue for 26 was $89.99 million, which was down 1.78 from 25, but 1.6 million above our 10-year average. On the net side, we were at 55.38, which was 7.2 down from 25, but 0.7 above the 10-year average. On the timberland side, it accounted for 90.02% of our gross and 92.84 of the net. On the leasing side, mineral leasing premiums replaced about 1.7 million in revenue, with all the leasing programs generating 10.7 million, the highest since 2017. Competitive auctions and one-time premium bids contributed to this increase for this fiscal year, but the income level is expected to be sustained or exceeded in the next 3 to 5 years from base rental rates. It is also of note that over the last several years, we have produced between $5 to $10 million directly to the permanent fund, primarily driven by our sand and gravel production. The department aims to increase leasing income to over 25% of gross and net totals and to further refine sustainable timber management programs. Monte Carlo analysis of timber revenue based on 10-year stumpage price volatility and harvest levels will continue to forecast future timber harvest values, and in the future can be used to do some forecasting on the expenditure side. The combination of diverse leasing and robust timber management positions the department for stable and likely increased revenue generation for the future. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, Governor, moving on, the last item in the reports is item E, Resource Protection Assistance Report. And Shannon will go quickly through this one for us. Quickly.
Well, we were long-winded, so we're sorry.
Absolutely.
I can concatenate this. All right, Governor, Land Board, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Shannon Chalette. I'm the Division Administrator for MNOG. I'm here to present the biennial report. The highlights of activities in the RPA Bureau over the past 12 months are as follows. Pertaining to our NAV Waters program, IDL generated a little over $1.3 million from NAV Waterways in fiscal year of '26. The dedicated fund for this program exceeds about $2.7 million, as shown in Figure 2 on page 3. IDL is working closely with the Idaho Office of Information Technology Services to develop a more streamlined and secure data platform called Fulcrum to manage permits, leases, easements, disclaimers, and other future records. Encroachment permits have been the first advancement within the system and went live in May of this year. The submerged land lease module is in development and expected to go live by December of this year. Instrument activity through the second half of '26 is shown in Table 1 on page 1. Pertaining to our regulatory minerals program, the 2026 legislature approved the pending IDAPA Rule 20.03.02, the mine line reclamation rules, which came active and effective July 1st of this year. Concerning perpetual resources stibnite mine, IDL approved their sanitization facility permanent closure plan and the initial 3-year construction phase of the reclamation plan. Mine construction began October of '25 and continues today. Concerning Integra Resources, De La Mar Mine in Hawaii County, this project is undergoing accelerated NEPA permitting review as part of the Fast 41 permitting program. The project is currently in the mine plan of operations review stage. Submission of the closure plan and reclamation plan to IDL is anticipated second quarter of 2027. Concerning Liberty Gold Black Pine Mine in Cassia County, this project is undergoing accelerated NEPA permitting review as part of the Fast 41 permitting program. The project is currently in the draft environmental impact statement review stage, and IDL anticipates receiving a sanitization facility permanent closure plan application in March of '27 and a reclamation plan application in September of '27. The Abandoned Mine Lands, or ML program, is funded by receiving 50% of Idaho's mine license tax and net 1% to Idaho's mining industry, excluding sand and gravel as described in Code 47-1205. IDL share of the income for fiscal year of '26 was a little over $540,000. Figure 3 on page 7 illustrates the revenue, expenditures, and balances for this fund. In May of this year, IDL held its first meeting with the newly established AML Advisory Committee. We're currently prioritizing projects and will discuss its tentative schedule of projects with the committee at the next scheduled meeting in October of this year. With that, I now stand for any questions.
You've got a statement in here, records are currently being reconciled, that the expense accounting, obviously they didn't reconcile and now they're being reconciled. When do you think that'll be done?
Governor, that's a great question. The answer is as soon as possible.
Okay, perfect.
And the reconciling, to be clear, sir, is for the yearly expenses and not the yearly revenue piece.
Okay, that's fair.
Governor?
Go ahead.
Quick question, out of curiosity, the mine permitting process in Cassia, where is that specifically?
Governor, Superintendent Critchfield, that's a great question. That's out there in Cassia County, southeastern part of the state, right next to the Utah border.
Right adjacent to your property.
We know where Cassia County is.
No, yeah. Do you know specifically in the county where?
I've not been there.
Okay,
I do.
all right. We'll find out.
Malta side.
Watch it be in Oakley.
No, it's on the Malta side.
Oh, is it Malta? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe for Shannon's benefit, Superintendent Critchfield lives in Cassia County, so she knows where it's at.
And Governor, Madam Superintendent, that is Black Pine area. It's a mountain just right north of the Utah border. So it's on that Malta side.
Idaho's north of the Utah border.
Yes, just the mine is north of the Utah border. So I think I got it correctly. I used to work out there, so I should remember that. But okay, Governor, Land Board members, on the consent item, consent agenda, we have 3 items. Item 2 are the draft minutes from the July meeting. Moving on to item 3, the strategic plan for FY27 through FY30. We'll have Bill handle this one for us.
Welcome.
Thank you, Governor and Land Board members. Once again, Bill Hoganson, Deputy Director for the department. This is the department's strategic plan for fiscal 27 through fiscal 2030. The deadline for submittal to the Division of Financial Management is September 1st. So back in 2016, the department identified 4 foundational goals that remain at the heart of the strategic plan. They continue to represent our core responsibilities and guide our daily activities, and those 4 foundational goals are financial stewardship, customer-focused, people, and process, and there are descriptions of those in the materials. The department has also developed and continues to maintain 6 future-proofing goals aimed at preparing the department for challenges yet to come. Those future-proofing goals are workforce planning, classification and compensation, facilities and workplace infrastructure, workforce housing facilities, fire, fund integrity, and policy and procedure. So for both the foundational goals and the future-proofing goals, there have been specific tasks identified for each. The department will continue to incorporate tasks and objectives that align with strategic plan goals into the employee performance plans. And that alignment between the employee performance measurement and the strategic plan ensures that our effort is properly focused and that the employees can see how their roles directly link to the goals of the department. The strategic plan this year also includes a strategic focus on strengthening education, communication, and engagement with employees, elected officials, beneficiaries, stakeholders, partners, and the public. So a strong focus this year on doing a better job of telling our story moving forward. The proposed strategic plan which includes our mission, vision, values, and goals, is provided as attachment 1. And this year, we have also produced a high-level report of strategic plan implementation progress, which is included as attachment 3. That is for the land board's information and would not be submitted with this year's strategic plan. The recommendation is that the board direct the department to submit its strategic plan to DFM by September 1st, and I'd be happy to stand for questions.
You deleted the 90% of all sweep transactions are reconciled within 90 days. You deleted that,
Yes.
so what's taken its place?
Yes, Governor. Deleted because that's already being worked on internally. We already have processes being developed and in place between the Timber Bureau and our fiscal group to make sure that we're getting that stuff done. So it didn't, at this point, rise to the level of the strategic plan because it's being addressed.
Go ahead.
Governor, just for a comment, I just want to thank Director Bill for including the progress report from the prior year. That's been a request I've asked for a couple times, and thank you for including that. And wherever possible, I guess, be able to add quantitative or measurable measurements whenever. I think that would be helpful for tracking and for yours at the department, but for us as well for accountability. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll work on that.
Okay.
Director.
All right,
Thanks,
Governor,
Bill.
just want to quickly let folks know that the Attorney General is online right now. I think he's been on just for a little while. Okay, item 4, let's move on to the mineral lease live auction results. This is an item that we heard last month and we delayed a month, so we'll bring Jim up here to quickly walk us through
Mr. Elvin.
this.
Good morning again, Governor and members of the board. For the record, I am Jim Elbin, Division Administrator over the trust lands for the department. Before you is mineral lease E500077, which was held a live auction on May 28th. This item was postponed last month, as the director said, due to concerns and some questions that we've since done some investigation into and provided information. The rest of the information is before you in your packet, and I'll stand for any questions.
Governor?
Controller.
Jim, thanks for that. I guess one thing we talked about last month was there's 2 different areas right there, and one is ITD has a pit or a mine or a gravel pit right there. Are they currently actively working in that site right now, or have they been, or what, if you can give some background on the ITD portion as well?
Yes, sir, Governor and Mr. Controller. They're not, the lease is active. They have not been active in the last 18 months or so, but they could be at any time. due to the nature of their lease.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Jim.
Morning.
Last meeting, we talked about this at length. You know that, hence why we're back here. I looked through the entire packet. What has occurred since the last meeting? Because the packet doesn't address, it just has the lease up again.
There's been more investigation and outreach to neighbors, and that's really about it.
What is that? What does the outreach to neighbors part mean?
There's been talk from at the board level and with major members of the community, and I'm assuming we've had a bunch of feedback. I have not received some of that, so I can't 100% speak to what has changed or what hasn't from this overall thing on the communication side.
So I guess what has IDL done to communicate with people since the last meeting?
We've put out more detail about there's an adjacent lease, and honestly, I mean, to get a better answer to that, I really would need the area manager here. They're the ones that are handling the on the ground, dealing with that with those folks. But they've continued the outreach and the one-on-one direct communication with as many people as they can, is my understanding.
Okay, so to summarize, and feel free to jump in, that you know that there's people talking to people, but we don't know exactly what people are talking about or who's talked to who.
That's fair.
Okay. Well, I don't think that. And then, go ahead if you do.
Oh, okay, Governor, if I might.
Go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, yeah, appreciate the question, and certainly with the board postponing that, there was reporting out to the community and the local papers about what happened at the board meeting. And in the paper, they reminded, folks that this was advertised in the local paper. As a result, I did get some calls from a couple of people asking, what this was all about, and no indication of support or opposition. They were just, one gentleman indicated that he had read about this some time ago in the paper, and he'd got the notification. I did talk to the chair of the Valley County Commission, just to make sure we were still communicating on this. There's no opposition from the county based on that conversation. And so it's out there, certainly. And what we'll get into next, later in the agenda, is sort of our strategy moving forward and we'll certainly welcome and need guidance from the board on the expectations on what exactly we need to be doing with the additional outreach above and beyond what we're currently doing and what the board had supported in 2019. So this has been out there, certainly. I think having this out there a month ago in a public forum put it back on people's radars, and those that didn't know about it have heard about it now. So, but I know it's on people's radar.
Governor, further question, and I'm mindful of item 10. Like, we'll get to the communications piece further. One of the things, and I wasn't paying close enough attention last month, just where the parcel is located. Did we evaluate other uses for the? I know there was an application considering this lease, but did we evaluate other uses? I mean, a lot of parcels that look really similar to this we've disposed of.
So, Governor and Mr. Secretary, yes, that's been looked at. What you have is a lease that was very active up until 2023. You have a pit that needs reclaimed. So, yes, we looked at other things, but until we reclaim the pit, whether through a new lease that allows somebody to come in, operate, and their initial plan, from my understanding, is that they would mine this out over the next 3 years. There's about $350,000 worth of material for the permanent fund on our side left there. And then the site would also be reclaimed through their reclamation plan on this lease. That would have also happened if we hadn't had a default on the previous lease, right? That's the intent behind the whole thing. So in order to really do anything going forward, regardless of what that is, it needs to be reclaimed to do whatever that higher and best use, whether that's growing timber again, whether that's a lease of some kind. And it didn't grow timber because you can tell from the photo, but the point being, there needs to be reclamation work one way or the other before we can actually do really anything else with that parcel.
Well, I guess just one of the things I've struggled with, and I think this was communicated last time, is just the level of understanding we have based on the community feedback that we've received I mean, things like this would be helpful information to have. It's one of these, I'm not predisposed for or against it, but the communication along this particular lease has been challenging, and obviously I've expressed concerns about communication on other things, so that's still where I'm struggling here.
Yeah, Governor, Secretary, understood. It's
fair.
It's location, right? Real estate's location, location, location. So we reported what we would normally report, and I think the area, we spoke about this last month, the area did over and above what we require for outreach to people. Evidently, we didn't hit the right people. We're working on that internally. We will be better about that. I guess the other thing I would add for everybody's information is that basalt's not a common resource in this neck of the woods, which is why you saw the upbidding that you did at the auction. And, you know, people probably take it for granted when you're driving down the road, but when you have nice paved roads or good gravel roads, that's basalt. And those are pretty important for both our industry that we do and for the people who live in this community.
So, Jim, if we take no action, the contract, I guess we give them their $400,000 back. And then they could reapply. What happens if we take no action?
Governor, if the board takes no action, we would definitely have to refund their premium bid. I think we would probably want to look at making sure it's up front, because a lot of times on mineral leases, the specificity comes with the reclamation plan when it comes to what's going to happen with the day-to-day operations within the mine, expected production, what they're going to do as far as traffic controls, dust abatement, those kinds of things. In this situation, I think we'd want to be a little more specific about that. If there's still interest in working in that rock pit, then we would re-advertise said lease, have a new auction, and move forward under that premise.
When the lease was auctioned, we had conditions on it. If we wanted to change the conditions, I mean, if I bid on it, under a certain set of circumstances said, I'd say, well, it might not been worth $400,000 if I had more conditions on it.
Governor, that's 100% fair, and that would be my expectation as well. If we're going to fundamentally change anything in the actual lease itself, we should allow people to evaluate that and bid accordingly.
Okay. Action?
Or Governor, I guess maybe one more question similar
Go
to
ahead.
yours. If we put it back out for bid or rebid it, whether it's conditions or kind of what the governor was alluding to, is there any path to broaden the scope of that, not just to a mineral lease, but what other interests might, because I can see other interests in this land that might be of a higher value than what we're discussing here, and this would lock it up for 10 years.
I think we can do that. Again, it gets back to the reclamation piece. I don't think somebody that wants to do a different activity really wants to reclaim a mine. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know. I don't know. We could advertise that. My opinion is it would be better to have a professional rock miner get in there, do the work that they need to do, whether it's just reclaiming it, because we can do that through bond assurance fund or directly from ER to reclaim the site and have it ready and then advertise it for another use, or go through the process of getting our royalty fees off of it and getting it back in shape.
Jim was a previous leaseholder. Do they have any liability? That lease, that's an old lease. There was no bond assurance fund when it was done before, so there's not a pool of money somewhere to do the rehab other than us taking it out of our funds. Is that correct?
Governor, I don't know 100% the answer to that, but that is the issue why they had to default, right? I don't know if there were what the actual conditions were. I would have to look into that and get that back to the board. But to your question, as far as funds, if there isn't any money available in the bond assurance fund, the greater pool, then yes, we'd be into the earnings reserve operating expenses.
All right.
Also, just to remind everybody, this is on the consent agenda, so I don't want you to not approve the minutes.
Governor, just one question for Jim, just in the event that this is not, the lease is not awarded, would ITD still be able to operate on that same piece? And would they have, I'm not sure what their access situation is.
Governor, Director, yes, they have an active lease that is no part of this. So, and I'm assuming, and that's on me on this, I need to do my homework, but I'm assuming they have the same access road, but they may not. It may be totally separate. I'd have to do more diligence on that.
Can you elaborate just on that ITD portion? I just don't.
Jim, are you able to?
Oh, sure. When you look at the red polygon that's on your screen right now, ITD, and the reason that lease shape looks so big, I don't know that this ever made it on the record, is because it's a government lot. It's it'd be very expensive to do a survey to just line out the actual impact of the rock pit, but it's more like 7 acres. Immediately north of that, and if you look at the photo, what kind of looks like a meadow, it looks meadowy on the photo. On the north end of that, that's where ITD has their active lease.
For
Immediate for sand and gravel.
Sand and gravel. Okay.
Yep. Same exact use, just immediately north.
So just for a comment, I guess that's where I was heading with the ITD thing. If they'll be hauling out and neighbors on Warren Wagon Road be thinking that we went forward with it, the same, I guess it's back to communication, and relationships again.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, and maybe legal counsel is going to be necessary here. If we take no action, what happens?
We would have to know, I think the department would say Governor, we would, and members of the board, we would say that the board didn't approve the auction results, and it would be like it never happened, return the money to the winning lessee, and then, probably contact the other bidders of what's happened and go forward with whatever we decide to do, make sure everybody's aware of that.
Well, I guess, Governor, is there obviously taking no action or rejecting the lease, or just, I guess, part of I think the concern is almost just starting the process over. I will say for myself, and just for the public's sake, I'm not inherently opposed to the concept of this. I think it's what the controller just said. There's just a lot of communication and concerns, and potentially I've heard from others the potential of conditions, right, about use time and other things, and just to a certain degree rejecting this lease and starting over again.
And to be fair, I think obviously this has become a thing, right? So I think our operators are aware that this is being talked about. They may not want to go forward if they know there's going to be some different restrictions and want to rethink.
I think that's
And all of them that maybe bid on it maybe want to rethink it. It might be more valuable to somebody else. So there is that piece of it. I don't know where that is because it's not appropriate for us to talk to them until we have a path forward.
Well, with that,
So when we come to the end of the consent agenda and we say there's a motion to adopt the consent agenda, I assume it will be adopt the consent agenda with the exception of this item.
so moved.
I got a motion,
great motion. Second.
moved and seconded. Are we done with the consent? Is this the last item on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, you got a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Governor, land board members, on to the regular agenda. Item 5 is the Endowment Fund Investment Board report presented by Chris Antone, and there is a voting item, which is why this is on the agenda, the regular agenda.
Governor, members of the Land Board, good morning. As Director Miller indicated, I have 2 items today. The first is our normal monthly investment performance update, and the second is our recommendation for fiscal year, 2028 beneficiary distributions. So starting with the investment performance, as you can, if you recall, the markets were up strong in June as the U.S. entered into a ceasefire agreement with Iran. However, that kind of fell apart as we entered into July. And so the markets were down as the war commenced and oil prices escalated. The good news, however, is as we entered into August, a lot of corporations started reporting their second calendar quarter earnings. And earnings have really just been off the chart, particularly in the technology sector, but also in the energy-related sector, some of the pharmaceutical companies. In fact, if you look at the earnings for the S&P 500 from the second quarter of 2025 to the second quarter of 2026, they're up almost 50%. So the strong earnings that were reported so far in August have pushed the market back up. So through yesterday, the portfolio is up about 1.6%. So started down a little in July, up in a pretty good shape so far in August. In terms of other activities, we did have a board meeting yesterday. So when I issued this report, I said no significant action taken by our board. However, they did approve the addition of Arrow Street Capital as a new global equity manager. I know we've discussed in this meeting several times kind of our performance on the global equity side, and we think Arrow Street will be a nice addition to the portfolio.
So, Governor,
Go ahead.
did you replace that or remove a advisor or a form?
Governor, State Controller Wolf, yes. So one of our observations is on the global equity side, we had two, what we refer to as quality growth managers and one value manager. And quality growth has really been out of favor as some of the technology tech companies have taken off. They're not very profitable. Some of them, many of them are. But so what we're adding is we're going to replace one of the quality growth managers, Wellington, and add Arrow Street. They're more of a core kind of middle of the road manager.
Okay, thank you.
The other item I noted in the report is the passing of Jerry Eldapi, one of our board members. Governor, I know the family at a celebration of life did appreciate the note you sent that was read, so appreciate that. Also just wanted to highlight, we're also down a second board member because Senator Jim Woodward wasn't reelected. So at some point, we'll need a couple new board members, as you probably already know.
Noted.
Thank you. With that, I'll transition to the second item unless there are questions on the performance report.
Go ahead.
So the question before the land board today is whether or not to approve beneficiary distributions of $132,532,800 and transfer $339,257,000 to the permanent fund. And let me go through the recommendations. So starting, I guess, on page 2 of the PowerPoint presentation, first is just a reminder to the board of what our distribution policy is. So our current policy, land board policy, is to distribute 5% of a 3-year average balance of the permanent fund annually. We also try to maintain earnings reserve levels at 7 years of beneficiary distributions, and to the extent we have more than that, to transfer those into the permanent fund, again, to grow beneficiary distributions. So that's the basic policy. Where were we at the end of the fiscal year? Both the EFIB and the Department of Lands had very strong performance during the fiscal year. The endowment fund generated an investment return of 16.6%, or 13.6% net of inflation. This equated to $584.4 million in investment gains net of all fees and expenses. And the Department of Lands generated $52.4 million in net revenue. That number is slightly lower than the number that Mr. Elbin reported, just because we're reporting cash coming over to EFIB, and I know Department of Lands had some revenue that was accrued, but the numbers are very close. And in addition, $153.3 million in timber was pre-sold. So again, we ended the year with strong backlog of orders. Earnings reserves did exceed the target level, and because we're in such a healthy position, I will be recommending an increase in beneficiary distributions today. Page 4 shows our years of earnings, or levels of earnings reserved by beneficiary expressed in years of distributions. You can see the line there is our target is 7. Most of the beneficiary had about 10 years of reserves. And so when I talk about transfers today, we're essentially chopping off those bars above the line and moving those into the permanent fund. The next page, page 5, first of all, provides kind of a history of our distributions. You can see we've had, solid growth since 2021, where distributions were $84.5 million. The current year we're in, they're $117.3 million. And the recommendation is $132.5 million, an average increase of 13%. You'll see that we did hold State Hospital South flat one more year at $7.8 million. As you recall, Governor, we used to distribute 7% for State Hospital South, and the rationale for that was relative to their size. They had a lot of cabin site revenue. And as the cabin site's been sold, we said, let's bring that to 5, but let's not cut their distributions. Let's do it by growth of the assets. And fortunately, I think next year we'll be to the point where we'll be at the 5% level and possibly see some growth in their distributions. So that's the recommendation on beneficiary distributions. The second part, as I mentioned, is to transfer the excess reserves into the permanent fund. And you can see those equate to $339.3 million. So basically reducing the earnings reserve from $1,267 million to $927.7 million, moving that into the permanent fund and bumping the permanent fund up to about $3.1 billion. So the recommendation in real dollars and more detailed dollars are on page 6. Again, to distribute $132,532,800 and to transfer $339,257,000 to the permanent fund. Before I leave that item, our board did discuss in quite a bit of detail yesterday whether or not to add that to the gain benchmark. And I don't know if everyone is familiar with the gain benchmark, but the gain benchmark is essentially the inflation-adjusted corpus of the permanent fund. So it's all contributions to the permanent fund adjusted by inflation each year. If we add it to that, if we add the transfer into the gain benchmark, we have less flexibility because the corpus essentially goes up. And so by moving it into the permanent fund, there's no downside in terms of the beneficiaries. We still use that balance in calculating beneficiary distributions, but it gives us a bit of a buffer if the market drops. Because as you recall, if we're below the gain benchmark at the end of the fiscal year, we can't move any money out of the permanent fund to replenish the earnings reserve funds. So while it mentions in your book not adding it to the gain benchmark, our recommendation from our board meeting yesterday is to not add that to the gain benchmark. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions? But the net is $339 million that'll be in the permanent fund. If we get 10% a year, it's $34 million to the beneficiaries. If we get 5%, it's $17 million a year more that we're going to give to the beneficiaries.
Correct.
Further questions?
Governor, not a question, but a comment.
Go ahead.
A note of appreciation for consideration of not including the gain benchmark. I will be approving of that recommendation in the motion.
Governor, Superintendent Critchfield, just one final comment. I know we did indicate that we would discuss some of your other recommendations at our meeting because we were limited on board attendance. We didn't do that, but we plan to invite you to the meeting in November and certainly meet with you and Mr. Eggenbrod in the near future.
Thank you.
Governor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Anton, part of our role is current beneficiaries and future generational beneficiaries. With this recommendation, do you still feel that we're treating today's current beneficiaries the same as tomorrow and our grandchildren's generation?
Governor, State Controller Wolf, yes, I do. I think the policy and the mechanics and how it works are very well thought out. Again, we've been in an extraordinary period the last few years. We've had the good fortune of strong investment gains. We won't always have that. So it feels right now we're pretty flush, which is a good thing. It's allowed us to grow distributions considerably next year. But I think the approach we're taking is sound and supports both current and future beneficiaries.
All right.
Governor,
Go ahead.
I guess as maybe a future, it might help me, and this doesn't need to be for today, to see you provided the distributions over time, but just to know the balances over time, right? We've got a layout of where they are currently, but just to know that, and I think it goes to the controller's question of just, all right, how are we trending overall versus, the distribution? And because I think that's what the needle that we're all trying to thread, right?
Yes.
The balance between the two.
Yes. Governor,
Nothing
Secretary of
pressing, I
State,
just
yes,
wanted to share it because I'm thinking it.
I will send that to you. And I know in the November meeting, we will also be reviewing our audited financials. We approved those yesterday as well, and they do have some of that historical information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Motion.
Yes. Was the motion, was there an updated motion in the materials?
I didn't send a new memo. I think the only difference is if you go to the first page on item C, the only change to the recommendation would say on the last sentence, the transfer to the permanent fund will not be added to the gain benchmark, but the amounts are still the same.
Thank you, appreciate that. I can read that.
Go ahead.
The endowment, or let's see. Well, I'll just make a motion out of the recommendation. A motion that the State Board of Land Commissioners approve the FY 2028 beneficiary distributions of 132,532,800 and transfers to the permanent fund of 339,257. The transfers to the permanent building fund will not be added to the gain benchmark. Did I say that?
Yes, got it.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Governor, Land Board members, item 6 on the regular agenda are our FY28 budget enhancements, requesting approval of those, and we will have Rochelle Vance, our Financial Executive Officer, present on this item.
Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Good morning, Governor and members of the Land Board. For the record, my name is Rochelle Vance, Financial Executive Officer. The Department of Lands is seeking concurrence on its proposed 2028 enhancement decision units pursuant to Idaho Code 67-3502. All agencies are required to submit their budget request to DFM and LSO by September 1st, 2026. However, the Land Board briefing and meeting schedules prevent us from having our full budget request ready for the August meeting. The complete and final budget will be presented to the Land Board for approval at the September meeting. The department is requesting consideration of the attached decision units which support the strategic objectives outlined in our strategic plan. The department's proposed decision units can be found in attachment 1. We have a total of 18 decision units, along with one request for one-time operating and capital outlay replacement items, and one request for ITS recommended replacement items. As you can see, the majority of our budget enhancements are for fire that align with our fire strategic plan and will be supported entirely with dedicated funds. Julia Locke will be presenting on the forest fire improved parcel assessment rate recommendation next. It may be necessary for us to modify or scale back our fire dedicated budget enhancement requests depending on the rate approved by the board. Please note DU 12.01 is a general fund request for $131,800 to restore the additional 1% fire rescission JFAC approved during the last legislative session on an ongoing basis. This DU is being included per our conversations with DFM. In addition, we're requesting 5 new positions, 4 for fire and 1 in fiscal, to be funded 100% with dedicated funds. Our total ongoing request is for $4,965,300, with an ongoing general fund request for $131,800. We have worked with DFM and the Governor's Office in developing our budget request, and we will continue following DFM guidelines through the rest of our budget submission process. I know we have a full agenda this morning, so with that, Governor and Land Board members, I'd be happy to go through Attachment 1 in more detail or stand for any questions.
Governor,
Go ahead.
is that your way of trying to get out of questions? Sly.
This is my first time presenting.
I will be gentle. Part of my ignorance, and it probably is, I think I know, but I would rather not assume that I know. The dedicated fund, because you mentioned like the 4 positions coming out of the dedicated fund. What's the revenue stream for that dedicated fund?
It's the fire dedicated and fire assessments.
Okay, fire assessment. Okay,
Yes.
that's what I needed. Okay, thank you.
Governor,
Controller.
thank you. Rochelle, maybe if you can walk through just the philosophical point of how you determine, I mean, a lot of these, and I appreciate, I mean, it's a lot of decision units. But I think maybe first question, I guess, is this helping us try to catch up to what we have been behind on in a lot of these fire ones? Is this help us catch up, or is this kind of just part of the strategic plan to match up what the strategic plan is?
Governor and Controller Wolf, it is partly catch up. We are behind. There are a lot of inflationary increases, hence why we are seeking additional dedicated fund authority to help pay for expenses, mainly for fire, that not necessarily have been neglected, but we're just trying to ramp up fire preparedness and ways to fund fire.
Governor, a follow-up.
Go ahead.
Governor, thank you, Rochelle. I guess the one other one I have is, we have a lot of these that are 100% funded sources out of dedicated funds. Well, there's a couple of them that are out of the ER. But as I look at like I think it was 12.55 and 12.79. Oh, good, it's been updated because it had the wrong percent. But it was 90% on the previous one, and
You are
my math
correct.
was adding up. But in that case, most of them are split 50-50, which I appreciate. I'm trying to help protect the earnings reserve fund as well as the others, but how do you help determine what comes out of the ER and what comes out of dedicated? What's kind of the philosophy of the department to determine the percentages?
Governor, Controller Wolf, is it possible for me to get back with you in regards to
Fine.
that?
That's fine.
A lot of our replacement items for like vehicles and fire engines and things like that, that's 12.55. We get all of that information from our area offices. And so typically they know what we have purchased the original like vehicle or fire engine from. And so we replace it with that same funding source. So hence why that's a mix between dedicated and earnings reserve. In regards to 12.79, our ITS recommended replacement items, typically all of our IT items are a 10, 15, 75 split,
Okay.
if that's helpful.
Governor, just maybe for a comment, if that's all right.
ahead.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Rochelle, for that. I guess my key thing pushing forward, or going forward, would be we always look at how we're continuing to build on the growth side on all of our areas, whether it's timber, grazing, minerals, all that. But one thing I guess I continue to push or look at is how do we help on the net side so we can raise that net to a higher dollar value. And so where we're charging things, yes, we're not hitting the general fund because of the budget crunch that we're in. But now we're hitting our dedicated and our ER, our earnings reserve, I guess it's a tough balance, and I get that. So that's more of a comment just to how we help continue to look at from the department standpoint of how do we help with our expenditure side to look at that side versus not just our income, but also our expenditures of how we can be more fine-tuned and a sharper pencil on those things as well. So thank you.
Governor, Mr. Controller, if I could jump in briefly. As you recall, last year, our expenses stayed flat while our revenue went up. So we really continue to focus in on managing those expenses, ensuring that we bolster our revenue in the earnings reserve account. So certainly down the road, there's other opportunities to produce revenue on endowment lands that I think we can explore. A lot of different categories to help us with that net revenue, but really being mindful of those expenses is critical. And I guess to your question also on the 50-50 splits, a lot of these, certainly facilities, for example, you're seeing 50% dedicated, 50% ER. When you've got different facets of the agency all grouped together in our area offices, right? We want to make sure that we're mindful of fund integrity and that the right programs are paying into the account. So we can get you more detail on that.
And Governor,
Go ahead.
I think my question is really for you, Director. The last month we approved an increase in the assessments, right, related to the fire protection areas. Is that what it was? I'm trying to remember. What was it? It
We
was,
kicked the can. You kicked
oh,
the
we kicked the
can.
can. All right.
Yeah,
thank
Governor,
you.
that, and
that's
Mr.
why I
Secretary,
need a
that'll
reminder.
Chairman of that meeting.
I believe that, yeah. I do believe that entirely.
come yet.
I was having too much fun. I guess the question, I know that it was a challenging session when you were presenting the budget last session. I guess with your proposals here, what are you taking into consideration as it relates to, I mean, it's one thing to present it to us, it's an entirely different thing to present it to JFAC.
Governor, Mr. Secretary, I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't know what to expect. But certainly many of these, a big portion of these requests are related to our strategic plan for fire. And I think, anyone who's paying attention knows what's happening around us. And the need for us to continue to modernize our program to meet the demand of a growing population. 80% of our starts are human caused. That's what I had before you today, that snapshot in time. And we've got a huge responsibility. So, yeah, I mean, we're not focusing on general funds. In the past, we'd relied pretty heavily on general funds in our fire program. We don't have that option anymore. And so to be able to meet the demand, we've got to get the money from somewhere. And so I'll do the best I can in front of JFAC to articulate the reasons why we need these things that we've outlined that are related directly back to our strategic plan. These things are definitely, we took a fine, sharp pencil to our budget request, and all of these are necessary elements for our fire program moving forward. And certainly there's a number of things that are not related to fire, but again, we've adhered to the DFM guidance to not rely on general funds. And given the blessing that we got from the land board a while ago on the strategic plan, this is directly tied to the strategic plan, and we've got needs we've got to fulfill.
Well, and I guess this is just comment from me. I think as we go forward, obviously there's resistance, there's the sharpening of the pencil and finding the balance, but and I'm sure this is a broader conversation, including the governor and the legislature, is just, but wildfire is a common good and a general fund expense, and there should be an appropriate portion where it is serving the public interest to put out wildfires. While there are also private landholders and others that need to pay, I do believe in fee for service for that protection, but there is, and so it's us continually striking that balance, and some of that is the communication things of making sure members of the legislature are aware what the risks are, because we are facing bigger challenges, higher costs in our wildfire protection. So that's maybe just, I know that's hard in your position to do all that legwork to get it done, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we do need reliance on the support of the legislature as well.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll be, this fall, there's a series of tours and meetings, committee meetings, interim meetings that we'll be a part of to really start pushing the messaging out. So thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Governor West, I guess one last question. I don't know if it's Rochelle or for the director, but I guess where is DFM? You've partnered in going over with all of these. Are they okayed to have this many DUs, and are they okay with this? Or I guess where has their guidance been with this recommendation so far?
Governor, Controller Wolf, we did meet with DFM and the governor's office. Originally, we had a lot of our fire decision units at a 50-50 general fund dedicated split, obviously based upon the budget guidance. We changed all of our requests to 100% dedicated. DFM was supportive of all of these requests.
Okay, thank you.
Motion.
Governor, I know you usually abstain.
don't let him
I'm going to put the
abstain.
pressure. And, all right.
You should vote. It sounds like you already have.
Your team has, huh? I move that we direct the department to include the enhancement requests as outlined in attachment 1 in the fiscal year 2028 budget proposal due on September 1st, with a little caveat of whatever may tweak in the next agenda topic.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, further questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and as
Say aye. I was just trying to hold out for you.
as has been the tradition, I will abstain till I know how much money's in the budget.
It's certain that you do.
Fair enough, Governor. On to item 7, forest fire improved parcel assessment rate recommendation. We have our state forester back up here, and again, this was put on hold. We briefed you last month and hoping for action today, so kick it over to Julia.
Good morning, Governor and members of the board. For the record, my name is Julia Lauk, State Forester with the Idaho Department of Lands. The agenda item before you is the forest fire assessment proposal. There are several components in the memo that are repetitive from last month's memo and our discussion. So for the sake of today's meeting, I'm not going to cover every single section, but rather hit the high points and then move on to further explanation and more numbers than we did last month, which means I'll be focusing more on the analysis in attachment 1. Before we get to attachment 1, though, we are here to discuss fire preparedness funding, which is distinctly different from suppression funding. Historically, our fire preparedness funding has been a combination of about 50% general fund and 50% dedicated fund, with some supplemental federal grant dollars coming in. That's changed in recent history as the legislature has approved our budget enhancement request, but pushed the financial reliability or the financial component over into our dedicated fund rather than a 50-50 split. Drilling down even further, our forest fire assessment is what funds the dedicated fund, which is half or more of our preparedness funding. The forest fire protection assessment is comprised of 2 components: the per acre assessment that is applied to forested lands, and then the surcharge, which is applied to that improved parcel. Improved lot or parcel, defined in the Idaho Forestry Act, means forest land upon which a residential structure exists, as determined by the department. In making such determination, the department may consult with the county assessor. There are more than 102,000 total parcels currently assessed, and of those, 68,000 are improved. Those 68,000 improved parcels are what we are talking about today. The maximum assessment and surcharge rates are set in Idaho code, and the land board policy sets the implemented rate. The current implemented rates are 60 cents per protected acre and $40 per improved parcel. These assessments are applied on an annual basis. The forestry and fire protection assessment that has been adjusted periodically to address the changing preparedness cost. You can see this in the background section of your analysis, which is attachment 1, paragraph 1. Most recently, they were adjusted in 2008. The per acre assessment went from 55 cents to 60. And in 2009, the improved parcel surcharge went from $20 up to $40, where it has remained since. No change in those implemented assessment rates for 17 years. So what has changed since 2009? Our population has grown rapidly, with more than 2 million people that now call Idaho home. Residential development has expanded deeper into the forested landscapes, and changes to the Idaho Master Fire Agreement have resulted in the departments protecting significantly more of that wildland-urban interface, or WUI, than we have in the past. The WUI is often more dangerous and an unpredictable fuel type. We are also experiencing more human-caused fire ignitions, longer fire season, and more extreme fire behavior. In addition to what we have seen regarding the fire environment, we've seen a change in costs. Since 2009, we've seen approximately 128% growth in the cost of a Type 5 engine, and around 172% growth in the cost of a standard pickup, which is the command rigs that are out there for our fire wardens and assistant fire wardens. Similar cost increases have been seen in firefighter personal protective equipment and standard equipment necessary for wildfire suppression. Maintaining a fixed revenue rate while the cost of labor, equipment, fuel, and other operating inputs increase has resulted in the steady erosion of our purchasing power, meaning the same $40 assessment that supported preparedness activities in 2009 can purchase substantially less preparedness capacity today. The department has also increased our preparedness expenditure through added resource capacities. That's also laid out in detail in the background section of the analysis, paragraph 2 of the background. We've increased resources as the need has been recognized, approved by the Land Board, and then subsequently the legislature. In 2009, we operated 30 engines across 10 forest protective districts. This represents around 90 firefighters. Today, we have 39 engines across 11 forest protective districts, a 20-person hand crew, a 10-person suppression module, and 33 permanent engine captains, which represents a total of 259 firefighters. So 90 to 259 firefighters. Bureau staffing has also grown by approximately 20 positions to support aviation, fire emergency support coordination, logistics, dispatch operations, and shop support. Many of these additional resources, these positions did not receive the historic 50-50 general fund contribution and are holistically already reliant on the fire dedicated fund. The changed fire environment in Idaho and the greater western United States, the recognition and improved need for increased resources, and this widening relationship between the stagnant assessment revenue and the increasing costs of delivering wildfire preparedness services provides important context for the current proposal. And all of this is just to say that it is not just inflation since 2009 that are dictating the need for increased revenue into our fire dedicated fund. Back in July of 2025, the department came to the board with a proposed legislative idea to change the maximum improved parcel surcharge from $40 to $100 in code to ensure funding into the state for the future of the state's wildfire protection program. The board approved the department to move forward with this initiative, and it came in the form of House Bill 511 during the legislative session. As approved, it expanded the assessment authority available to the department and the Land Board. House Bill 511 did not modify the framework behind the assessment, but rather just the maximum rate that we're discussing today. The legislation recognized increasing preparedness costs, inflationary pressures, implementation of the Land Board approved fire strategic plan, workforce needs, aging infrastructure, and a growing wildfire risk across Idaho. This additional authority raised the maximum rate from 40 to 100 per qualifying improved parcel. This surcharge is based on the fact that an improvement exists and not on the value of that improvement. Because the statute does not authorize assessments based on assessed property value, taxable value, or other valuation methodologies, implementing a tiered or valuation-based assessment would likely require further legislative amendment. Under the current statutory framework, the board's authority appears, according to the department, to be limited to establishing a uniform surcharge applicable to each qualifying improved parcel, rather than creating multiple assessment levels based on evaluation criteria. The director and I met with the executive director of the Idaho Association of Counties last week to better understand, from a county perspective, what the potential impacts might be regarding not just changing a rate number, but potentially changing the structure of how we apply the forest fire assessment. At first glance, it's important to note that there are 44 counties that employ 4 to 6 different systems, none of which integrate into the system IDL currently uses. We have quite the manual process as it is. Changing the structure of our 2-component assessment would cause the need to reprogram the appraisal systems that the counties utilize. This could come at a significant financial cost to either the counties themselves or the state. Many counties utilize the program support from the Tax Commission as well, and that would take some time to implement. One last note on this topic, it is now my understanding, hopefully this is right, Director, that regarding property taxes, counties are constitutionally bound by uniformity. This translates to they apply a percentage of the property value to dictate the tax amount. They apply a percentage to the property value to dictate a tax amount. There appears to be one exception to that which applies different levels of a fee or assessment, but that is based on the property category, residential versus commercial or industrial, rather than based on the value of the property. While we're talking about external feedback, as mentioned at the meeting last month, the department solicited feedback from the Idaho Forest Owners Association, or IFOA, regarding the increase from $40 to $90, our proposal. You have, we provided a handout to the staff that summarizes the feedback we've received thus far. We've only heard back from 7 of the 280 active members of the association. We sent initial information immediately after the board meeting last month, and then we followed up after we had updated the analysis that went out to the members on August 1st. We have internally compiled a draft summary of the feedback thus far, but we don't believe that it is complete at this time. But the summary of the 7 responses, 2 expressed clear support, 2 expressed clear opposition or significant concern, and the 3 remaining were generally neutral, raising questions or identifying issues the IDL should address when communicating the proposal and the decision. The key takeaway from our perspective is that the limited feedback to date does not demonstrate a uniform position for or against the proposal. It does, however, indicate that explaining why the increase is needed, how the additional revenue will be used, why improved parcels are being assessed, and how it relates to the preparedness and wildfire response is important as IDL continues communicating the assessment change. And we will be updating our website to reflect all of these questions and the information that we have thus far once a decision has been made and we move forward with implementation. Getting back to the matter at hand, as shown in attachment 1, the department evaluated projected wildfire preparedness funding through 2032 using current appropriations, existing assessment revenues, inflationary cost increases, personnel cost escalation, equipment replacement schedules, fiscal year 28 strategic planning initiatives that you heard about from Rochelle, and an assumption of a reserve management objective of approximately $5 million. The reserve of approximately $5 million will allow the department to replace critical wildfire equipment, respond to unexpected preparedness needs, and maintain readiness between fire seasons, and reduce the funding volatility from year to year. There are additional policy and operational considerations, as well as modeling assumptions included in your analysis document, as well as 4 funding scenarios. It is the department's recommendation that the improved parcel assessment rate of $90 per qualifying parcel. This provides the level of dedicated funding necessary to accomplish all stabilization objectives and to begin implementing some of the priorities identified in the Land Board's approved fire strategic plan. These initial improvements are currently included in the department's fiscal year 28 budget. They include investments in firefighter recruitment, enhanced initial attack capability, wildfire detection, and modernization of critical equipment and infrastructure. A $90 assessment rate represents a $50 a year increase per improved parcel. Based on close to 68,000 parcels, the increase generates approximately $3.4 million in additional annual recurring revenue. On the second to last page of attachment 1, the planned commitment of those funds is broken down. The department's recommended assessment rate, if approved, would mean that we should not need to revisit the assessment rates until after fiscal year 32. The recommendation from the department for $90 to be set as the assessment rate, we believe that would set us well on the road to not only catching up with where we have maybe been behind and the deficiency spending, or the overspending for the fire dedicated fund every year, but it would also begin us well on the road to implement the fire strategic plan within the next 5 years. And by not needing to revisit the assessment rate, what I mean is revisiting the policy with the land board that doesn't have anything to do with the need to revisit the legislation or the code, because there would still be the 5 cents per acre remaining in code authority, as well as an additional $10 remaining in code authority for the improved parcels. So the timeline, if the land board approves the rate change today, the department can implement the new rate for the 2026 tax year. We must immediately turn around and get the assessment tables updated and provide those revised assessment that information to the counties by September 1st. Counties would then incorporate the rate into the 2026 property tax bills. The department could begin receiving revenue as early as this December. Missing the certification window would delay the increased revenue by approximately 1 year, pushing us out to December of 2027. If the rate approved is less than $90, we will need to reevaluate the fiscal year 28 budget enhancement request that financially impact the fire dedicated fund and likely need to postpone some. The fiscal year 28 requests affect firefighters. There would be some combination of temporary personnel costs and OE expenses that would need to be pulled back, as well as some programmatic capacity needs that you see in those FTE additions for the HeliTAC program, logistics, and a needed assistant fire warden. IDL bears a very public burden to be prepared and provide a rapid and robust response to wildfire across the state. Investing in dedicated funding to be prepared prior to the incident occurring is what is key in being successful in suppressing the fire. It is the department's recommendation to modify the land board policy for the landowner fire assessment rate to adjust the surcharge for each improved lot or parcel from $40 to $90. I will stop there and stand for questions.
So those 68,000 parcels, what's the range? Is a woodshed, what, and I know it probably varies by counties, which is an issue, but I think, and as I reviewed the minutes of the last board meeting, the word that multiple times about a tiered approach. You talked about the complications of doing a tiered approach, but to me, if you got a $3 million house versus a $1,000 camper trailer, the only reason we're not doing a tiered approach is because it's complicated.
Governor, members of the board, I don't disagree with that. The implementation for a tiered approach sounds incredibly complicated and time consuming. And we have not gone down the road to figure out exactly what that could or would look like.
I think that was the request, was other than it's complicated, but every county knows what the assessed value of those parcels are because they charge you property taxes predicated on the value, and there are state standards that are uniform among all 44 counties about if they do not charge on a fair market value for each one of those parcels, they're in violation of state law. That's their problem, not your problem, the county's problem. I think the question, but we've got the sword of Damocles over our head that we've got to do it in 10 days or we're going to miss the window. Is that correct?
Governor, members of the board, that is correct. If the board would like to change the rate for the 2026 tax year, we do have to get that information to the counties by September 1st. Currently, we just provide two numbers, the per acre and the surcharge, which is a flat amount if there's an improvement on the lot. The systems that the counties use do not easily allow, from our understanding thus far, do not easily allow them to differentiate that rate in any different fashion in their actual systems that produce the tax bills. So if we want to go down that road, it will dictate a need to change all of those 4 to 6 systems that the counties used programmatically for the system to take a tiered approach.
Governor?
Go ahead.
I'll start by thanking the controller for reminding me, because this whole conversation has flooded back throughout all of it. I just needed it in the different order. One of the things I want to say, Julia, I really do appreciate, in terms of the discussion last meeting, a huge portion of last meeting was focused on communication. I do appreciate you had done outreach before to the Timber Protection Association, but one of the big things was them not knowing the $90 figure at that point in time. So it's good just to hear that it's gotten out. We've gotten feedback. Mixed feedback makes sense. So I just want to acknowledge that, because I've been banging that drum. So want to acknowledge when I am seeing it being done. And it makes sense from my time as county clerk, what you're saying regarding the assessment tools. And I guess a question, it feels like, again, a gun to our head, right, in terms of timing, Governor. What seems to make sense is we approve this now, it's just coming from me, but that we may need to look at less about the systems and more about legislation. And should we be, instead of approving an amount, approving a rate? Because really the whole county tax structure is based on so it would just, instead of tiered approach, it's just we do an assessment rate, right? And you just pay your portion of the value of your assessed value, which is where I think you're going, Governor. And that actually fits a lot more with what the assessors and the treasurers are doing anyways. And so maybe we need to look at a different approach. I mean, we're going to still have to debate what the right amount is to assess. But that might make more sense in terms of ease of assessment on these.
But if you're a rural fire department, the taxpayers pay a fee. Those areas that have just a dedicated fire, or even if it's a city or county, you pay fire protection predicated on the market value times some levy rate. And that's uniform across the state. Getting their system to talk to our system to where we can tell them, send us how many improved parcels you have, and what's the minimum value of those 68,000? What's the range? 10 million to $5,000?
Governor, members of the board, I haven't asked that question. It would be.
Well, I know what it is.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Anything that holds a residence,
Are they only residences?
only a residence.
Well, so if you've got a camper parked on your 160 acres that you go spend one weekend to go elk hunting, is that a residence?
Governor, members of the board, we rely heavily on each individual county to help us identify which parcels include an improvement. If it is a travel trailer that is movable, I would say no, they don't likely get that improved surcharge. If there is a foundation underneath it, then they might, depending on the county.
But depending on the county.
Mm-hmm.
Governor, I just think follow-up is it may make more sense for us to assign a levy rate, exactly what you're saying.
Well,
that's the way the system is built.
I think given the sort of Damocles that's over our head, we really don't have a lot of choice here.
Today.
But if you look at the graphs that we see about what our reserves are going to do over the next 4 or 5 years, given the growth in the cost of fire, that we might have to look at an assessment predicated on fair market value as we go forward.
Governor.
Superintendent.
Excuse me. Yes, I was going to, pardon me, agree with the secretary on a hybrid, and I think you're saying the same thing. Have an action today that I think reflects just overall costs that have changed since 2006. So the tiered approach and discussion, which I think is a worthy one, to the side. We continue with that, but also recognize that costs have gone up since then. The previous conversation of everything related to where we are with fires seems to warrant a change by itself, and then build upon that to include other factors that we don't have in front of us today, but I think would be important to come back to us.
For the question, motion.
Governor,
Go ahead.
I'll move that we approve the assessment rate adjustment from $40 to $90 for the next fiscal year, or whatever year you're measuring by. How does that sound, Julia? But also direct the department to pursue whether it's legislative changes or other things to explore just what the superintendent. So whether it's changing to an assessment. I mean, we did the legislation to get this done. Maybe we need to just revisit that same legislation to be able to take into consideration what the governor has said.
I'll second that.
Further discussion. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you.
Okay, Governor, Land Board members, we have 3 information items. We are at 11 o'clock. We'll work quickly through these. So we'll bring up Archie on item 8. This is just an update on IDAPA rules pertaining to the Idaho Forest Practices Act.
Good morning, Governor Little and Land Board members. My apologies, it's been a while. My throat's a little dry, but I'll try to speed read as much as I can. My name is Archie Gray. I am Chief of the Forestry Assistance Bureau for the Idaho Department of Lands. Thank you for the opportunity to present on the information agenda item that is the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation petition to have the Department of Lands promulgate rules pertaining to Idaho Code 38-1304 1F included as Attachment 5. To refresh your memory, subparagraph F was added in 1991 and directs the State Board of Land Commissioners to adopt rules to provide for timely salvage of dead, dying, or threatened timber on all non-private forest lands of greater than 2,000 contiguous acres. On April 22, 2025, the Farm Bureau Federation sent a letter petitioning the department to enter rule promulgation specific to this section. Following discussions between the department and the Federation, the department presented the request to the Forest Practices Advisory Committee, or FPAC. FPAC is our advisory group made up of stakeholders tasked with evaluating rules for inclusion under the Act. FPAC considered whether this section should be addressed in our forest practices rules, IDAPA 20.02.01, rules pertaining to the Idaho Forest Practices Act. FPAC's original conclusion was that additional rules were not necessary because nothing in our current rules prevented a willing and able landowner from conducting salvage harvests. As you may recall, I presented FPAC's findings and recommendations at the December 16th, 2025 Land Board meeting, where the board decided that based on the statutory language that the board shall adopt rules, that the department would proceed with rulemaking. I've included the Land Board minutes as attachment 1, which document the board's decision to proceed with rulemaking to address the statutory requirements found in Idaho Code 38-1304 1F, that the rulemaking should be limited specifically to that section and that it should recognize and include the agreements that the state of Idaho has established with the federal government. At its March 11th, 2026 regular meeting, FPAC formed a subcommittee to develop a starting draft rule. The subcommittee developed draft rule language which was reviewed by FPAC members via email. Using that draft language, the department entered negotiated rulemaking on July 1st, 2026 and completed it on July 22nd, 2026. 3 public negotiated rulemaking meetings were held. The first was on July 8th in Coeur d'Alene, where 3 people attended in person, 2 representing the timber industry, and 1 from Farm Bureau Insurance. We also had a concerned citizen and a timber industry representative attend remotely, along with a few internal staff. The second meeting was held in Boise on July 15th. We had 1 in-person attendee from Farm Bureau Federation and 1 non-IDL attendee online representing a large private timber owner. The final meeting was held in McCall on July 16th. We had 1 in-person attendee, an FPAC voting member, as well as 1 online attendee, again representing a large private timber owner. We received a handful of verbal comments during the discussions at the Coeur d'Alene and Boise meetings. We also received 2 written comments at the Boise meeting. Those were suggested rule language from Russ Hendricks of the Farm Bureau Federation and a letter of support for the rulemaking under the statute from Representative Mendive. 2 written comments were received through our rulemaking webpage, one from Idaho Fish and Game and one from Riley Stegner and Associates. At the conclusion of negotiated rulemaking, the department reviewed all comments received and developed responses to each of them as found in negotiated rulemaking summary and response document, which is attachment 4. We have made several modifications to the initial draft rule based upon the negotiated rulemaking process. The draft rule is included as attachment 2. The revised draft rule has been sent to FPAC members to review, and we have not received any concerns. It is our intention to move into proposed rulemaking unless the Land Board has concerns that would require us to return to negotiated rulemaking. The proposed rule notice of rulemaking is attachment 3. We are proposing 2 public hearings in October, one in Coeur d'Alene and one in Boise. Proposed rulemaking would be completed on October 28th, 2026. If we proceed, we would bring the final draft proposed rule resulting from that process back to the Land Board for approval as a pending rule at the November 17th Land Board meeting for inclusion in the 2027 legislative docket. At this time, we are uncertain what the administrative or financial burden on the department for this rule would be. It will depend largely on public demand and the expectations of the board. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions? Right, thank you.
Governor, Land Board members, item 9 is Idaho Wildfire Response Framework presentation. Julia is back to go quickly through this one.
Good morning again, Governor, members of the Land Board. I will try to go through this in an abbreviated fashion. For the record, Julia Lauk, State Forester with the Idaho Department of Lands. Based on some of the questions last month during the fire season update, fire activity that has increased since then and caused additional questions, it seemed timely for us to provide brief information item regarding Idaho's wildfire response framework. The department serves as Idaho's primary wildland fire protection agency for private forested lands and state lands. The authority is established through Idaho code and implemented through a coordinated statewide system of interagency agreements, cooperative response, and locally assigned protection responsibilities. Code establishes 2 primary authorities governing our wildfire suppression responsibilities. First, the department is responsible for protecting forest lands subject to the Forest Fire Protection Assessment. Second, code declares uncontrolled wildfire to be a public nuisance and authorizes fire wardens to suppress wildfires that threaten protected lands, life, property, and natural resources regardless of land ownership. Together, these 2 authorities establish the legal foundation for the department's wildfire response throughout Idaho. However, wildfire response in Idaho relies upon extensive coordination among federal, state, tribal, local, and rural fire protection agencies. Cooperative agreements establish how agencies share protection responsibilities, provide assistance to one another, and allocate suppression costs while maintaining rapid response regardless of jurisdiction. Because multiple agencies often respond to the same incident, several operational terms are very frequently misunderstood and misused. This is even more complicated with our current master agreement than in the past, especially in southern Idaho. This briefing intends to provide an overview of the response framework and explain how these concepts work together to ensure efficient, coordinated wildfire suppression across the state. The response framework in Idaho is built on a few foundational principles that guide the operational decision-making before, during, and after a wildfire. The first principle is that jurisdiction and protection responsibility are not necessarily the same. The agency that owns or manages the land does not always provide the wildfire protection for that land. Through agreements, that protection responsibility may be assigned to another agency that is better positioned to provide a timely response. The second principle is that the closest appropriate resources respond, regardless of jurisdiction, Modern wildfire response emphasizes the rapid response or initial attack to reduce that fire growth, improve firefighter and public safety, and minimize suppression costs. The third principle is that financial responsibility is separate from operational response. Agencies may provide resources under an offset protection, mutual aid, reimbursable response, or incident-specific cost share agreements, depending on the circumstances of the incident. These mechanisms allow agencies to coordinate rapidly the suppression activities while ensuring that the suppression costs are ultimately assigned appropriately. There's several definitions in your memo that I'm not going to read to you, but it goes through jurisdiction, protection responsibility, definition for a cooperating agency, offset protection, which is the exchange of the protection responsibility between agencies, but under an offset agreement, jurisdiction remains with the land management agency or owner. Reimbursable response, mutual aid, cost share, which is an incident-specific agreement, closest forces concept, which emphasizes dispatching the nearest available and appropriate suppression resources regardless of agency affiliation. There's also a definition that we have come up with for no man's land, which is an informal term used to describe privately owned lands that are outside established wildfire protection districts or other recognized protection arrangements. Although these lands have an owner, no agency has been assigned ongoing wildfire protection responsibility. Agencies may respond to those fires when they're threatening protected lands, life, property, or other values at risk. However, responding to the incidents does not establish permanent protection responsibility for those lands.
Governor?
Go ahead.
Just a quick question though. Do we ever, we or the federal government, end up billing somebody if they're in that situation?
Governor, Mr. Secretary, members of the board, we do not bill if a fire crosses your land. We would only bill for the fire cost origin in a fire cost recovery situation. Not sure that I answered that clearly.
Agree.
You got the look.
If a fire starts on a mile away and then crosses a parcel of no man's land, so where it's not part of a TPA, right? That, or the owner has chosen not to participate in some sort of agreement, that we'll put out the fire because we're trying to stop fire, but that owner just has some burned trees and some not burned trees, or grass or whatever else was burning.
Governor, Mr. Secretary, members of the board, that is correct. If a fire begins on a different ownership and burns across what we would call no man's land, which is private, non-forested land in the state of Idaho, there is no bill for the protection or suppression response to that landowner. The agencies that provide the response based on the threat to their primary protection or jurisdiction absorb the cost. And that may be done through a cost share agreement if multiple jurisdictions are involved.
Can you get us a map of no man's land?
I believe that we do have a map.
Good, okay, thank you.
And is that tied only to timber, or is that
No,
include
only
all-
rangeland.
Only
rangeland?
to-
Ag ground, rangeland, but not timber ground.
Okay.
'Cause
Governor,
timber
Mr.
ground,
Controller.
they're paying,
The
governor's
SSV.
yeah, they're paying. But those other lands, they're not paying because we only assess the item we had before on timberlands or improved
Right.
parcels
Right.
on timberlands, which we just quintupled their fee.
Governor, may I continue?
Continue.
In summary, almost done, Idaho's wildfire response framework has evolved to emphasize rapid initial attack, efficient use of suppression resources, and a coordinated interagency operation while preserving clear statutory responsibilities. Cooperative agreements do not change land ownership or jurisdiction, but rather they establish the operational and financial mechanisms that allow agencies to respond effectively regardless of ownership boundaries. As you've seen in some of these larger fires in southern Idaho that are not quote unquote owned by the Idaho Department of Lands, in that origin where that fire started, dictates the code of the fire, whether it's a state code or a federal code. If we do not own that fire based on the exact location of the origin, that means we may have a jurisdictional responsibility, a cooperating agency responsibility. It could be within a mutual aid zone or outside of a mutual aid zone, which has to do with the reimbursement sideboards. It could be a reimbursable fire, and it could have a cost share. So all of this to say it is very complicated, and we work very closely utilizing the master agreement as the guide with our federal partners for exactly what role we have as a department with each individual, especially large incidents. With that, I will stand for questions or.
So this is information, this document, that looks like status quo. Is that just information of the status quo? There's not a change there?
Governor, members of the board, that is correct. We are just trying to clarify for all members of the board and staff the complicated nature of wildland fire protection and the often misrepresented or misused terms.
For the board information, and it was in one of the other strategic plans, right now we're providing protection on 9.3 million acres of land. And then as we get to the end of the fire year and calculate all our bills, remember, it's not on 2.5 million, it's on 9.3 million.
Governor, members of the board, my staff and I are more than happy to sit down at any point in time to discuss the more particulars and the details of the fire protection program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Director.
Okay, Governor, land board members, I have the last item here, and then we'll hopefully adjourn. This is related to the neighbor notification policy, and as the board is aware, our advertising practices for endowment land and leasing activities have evolved in recent years. In March of 2019, the land board directed the department in coordination with the Office of the Attorney General to examine existing auction and leasing processes and identify opportunities for improvement while fulfilling the board's fiduciary responsibilities. In September of 2019, the board approved the department's revised lease advertising auction process in Attachment 1. The revised process was designed to increase public awareness of lease opportunities and provide greater opportunities for alternative proposals and competitive bidding. While maintaining compliance with applicable statutes and rules, the revised process established the following notification requirements. Lease opportunities must be advertised in the newspaper of record for the applicable county for at least 4 weeks. Lease advertisements must be posted at the appropriate supervisory area office. Expiring leases and lease opportunities must be posted on the department's website with detailed information. Certain lease types must be advertised through industry-specific media, and properties being promoted for lease application may be posted with signs on the property. The department may also provide additional notification, including notification to neighboring landowners when appropriate. However, additional notification is not currently required for every land management or leasing activity. At the July meeting, the board expressed interest in establishing a stronger and more comprehensive notification process for endowment land management activities. The board also recognized the importance of providing the department with clear, consistent direction regarding expectations for public notification. So in response, the department has developed a draft endowment land notification policy for the board's consideration. That's found at Attachment 2. The proposed policy is intended to clearly articulate the board's expectations and establish a consistent framework for notification. Following board direction, the department would develop internal procedures and necessary to implement the policy. And so quickly, the draft board policy includes background and context regarding the endowment land management and the board's fiduciary responsibilities, including the board's commitment to transparency, guiding principles for notification and public engagement, a tiered notification framework covering 3 levels of land management activities, notification timelines or timeframes where appropriate, the scope and limitations of the policy, and direction for the department to develop, maintain, and implement procedures consistent with the board's policy. So the board is, this is just an informational item, Governor, but the department is seeking board input and direction on the draft policy. And we certainly happy to make any modifications the board deems necessary. but we will come back at a later date for approval of this policy. And one thing to point out, and I believe I met with most of you in person to kind of walk through the policy, the 3 different tiered notification options here all include adjacent landowner notification. And so we've heard that loud and clear. That is paramount in every single one of these. But as things move towards that 3rd tier of actions that generate a lot of interest, a lot of public interest, there's a lot more that will go into the notification, the communications. That includes things like the proposed pay at land exchange, right? That's on a lot of people's radar. It's of very high interest, and so we certainly will go the extra mile in terms of communicating on those types of things. But I don't know if you've all had a chance to really dig into the policy. Your staff also have the draft policy, and so we're definitely open to feedback. And I'll stand for any questions.
Governor. Director, I know we haven't had a chance to sync up, and I guess from a couple of things from my perspective, I definitely think there's a lot more work that's needed, and some of that is probably just us having further conversations. And it sounds like you've had, and I encourage conversations with all the board members as it relates to it. I appreciate the acknowledgement of the neighboring landowners, but a couple of things that have stood out. The discussion that you presented with Attorney General Wasden from 2019, the focus of that conversation was on making sure communication was to potential bidders to increase profit. It had an entirely different focus than the concerns that we're presenting now. And so while that is important and we need to continue to make sure we are getting information out to potential bidders or whatever the case may be, to do that, I want to continue that. I think our concern is more right now concerned with information out to the public, specifically neighbors, and so a different focus there. And one of the things that really stood out to me in this, and that I will say I take issue with, is that on multiple instances, there's references to things like, while only the beneficiaries hold legal rights within the trust structure, Article 1, Section 1 of the Idaho Constitution makes it clear that these are public lands for all Idahoans, and that Idahoans, yes, they're held in trust pursuant to the Idaho Constitution. And so we can't lose sight of the public at large, as well as obviously the distributions go to the beneficiaries. And we are a public board elected by members of the state of Idaho, all the electorate. And I think that can get lost in these conversations. And so it's just important that this is public land. We have a state that's very proud of its public land. That's some of the challenges we've had in the legislature. And I think that's where some of the tension is coming up too, that we're experiencing. Sorry, that was more impassioned than I ever meant it to be.
No.
But I'm happy to have more conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you, Governor and Mr. Secretary. I think this was something that both Governor Little and I inherited back in 2018. It was a lease on the lake, and so we were trying to make sense of that. And certainly the lease advertising, and what I viewed that as, it was twofold. Obviously, to generate more interest in lease opportunities, but the complaints on that particular one came from neighbors that didn't know about it, right? And so that's why the newspaper notification was a big thing, to ensure that the public and potential other bidders were aware of these opportunities. But certainly we will step it up, and I know we do tier back to our constitutional mandate, and I appreciate the dialogue there. We just need to ensure that we provide our staff with clear direction, because I've got to give them some direction on what they are to be doing when it comes to neighbor notifications, while adhering to our fiduciary obligations. So appreciate that. Happy to talk further about it.
Yeah, parcel G, wedding site.
Oh, man.
Fun one. Your first day on the job, right?
And I'm still here, Mr. Controller. Can you believe that?
It is in the right direction. I think there's opportunities for our staffs and ourselves to continue to flesh this out, and appreciate you getting the framework. There may be areas where, for example, you take a gravel pit, may fit in tier 1 in general if it's in whatever county. But when it moves to maybe tier 3 when it's on Warren Wagon Road. And so I guess those are the opportunities of just
Is that tier
having.
4?
So
Well,
I
Mr.
guess-
Controller, hopefully, we make more progress on this land exchange and
Right, so, but I
we
guess,
won't have to worry about it.
I guess it comes with just process, and maybe sometimes policies lock in so much, but sometimes common sense has to come in too.
Absolutely.
A couple things, Director. A lot of this feedback goes to your regional managers. And so we had to have protocols to where if it shows up here, it gets to your office so you can let us know. So if 20 people complained and we don't have the right protocols for your regional managers to let you know and let us know, that's something you ought to work on. The notification letters that were sent out in the gravel pit basically said, this has been leased, there's nothing you can do about it. It wasn't like, and I appreciate you not giving them my cell phone. But that communication, and you got your arms around the magnitude of it, but what might be radioactive to one person is, if you say, here's 10,000 acres of state ground, we're going to do a geothermal lease on it, for somebody maybe 10 years from now is different than something that's as controversial as a gravel pit or some other kind of an issue. It's hard. And sometimes you get a couple activists, you'll think something's pretty generic, and all of a sudden it becomes a big deal. So I think this is good to have this policy out there. I think counties, not just notifying the counties, but saying, did you know about this? The forest legacy projects. We do forest legacy projects. I always want to know, what did the county say? And on forest legacy is an example, but it's hard because people got money and time and love to have access to our endowment lands. We do have, I differ a little bit with my friend, the Secretary of State. These are not public lands, these are endowment lands. Endowment lands are different than public lands because we have a trust obligation to maximize the return simultaneously with and that's why it's difficult, because it's not just generate cash. And, the McCall, we get $400,000 premium bid. We just went through the budget, and we'll scrutinize little $10,000 deals here and there when $400,000 check up front plus royalty payments is a good deal. But that is not a black and white. It's shades of gray, and that's what, but, we need to know, there needs to be enough outreach to where if it gets to be, and in that particular instance, what the conditions were, dust, hours of operation, number of trucks, impact on the road. Those are all issues there, but this is a good start, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate that, Governor. I know our folks take the endowment mission seriously, and they work hard, and, they've been operating under the rules that have been in front of them. So, but I think we're on the right track with this policy and trying to meet the board's desires here.
Governor, I think just as a follow-up, I appreciate the governor's comments specifically, just that this is hard. I think, because I know that the staff, that this getting the feedback is hard, but also like trying to make all the different assessments that the governor laid out, I think is particularly hard. I'll just note, we have amended the Constitution in the past. We could amend the Constitution in the future. And I think we've seen legislators and constituents who have thought to do so. So I think that's something to take into consideration as we're working through all this.
Anything else?
I'm sure we could add a few more things, Governor, but that's
No,
all I've
we're-
got.
There's a very important motion I'm waiting for.
I move that we adjourn.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.